Right. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:17 on October 22nd, 2025, and this is the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities. We are meeting today in a hybrid and remote model using a remote meeting application, which allows for remote participation for public access to the open portions, which of FNF there are none. BevCam is streaming and broadcasting our meeting tonight. Thank you, BevCam. Beginning in 2021 with the Acts of 2021, which were several times extended, local governments and boards were granted the provisions to, amongst other things, hold meetings remotely by suspending the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present. It asks our body to use technology to allow safe public access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation of members, though through that permission, the chair and a quorum must be physically present when this act and its extensions expire. Joining us today are members of the school committee, the subcommittee on finance and facilities, a resident rep, various members of district administration, and the leadership teams. I will call the roll in a minute. Please remember that any audio and video you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. As such, use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. Here comes our roll call. I know, unfortunately, Mr. Dominic Copeland is caught in traffic and will not be with us this evening. School committee member Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
School committee member Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Resident representative Paul Manzo.
Here.
Also in person, we have Dr. Peter Cushing.
Present.
We have Director of Finance Emma Puglisi.
Here.
We have our wonderful colleague from the City Council, Stephen Crowley.
Here.
There's a member of the audience, candidate for School Committee Ward 6, Mr. John Taylor. We also have in the room, running our technology, Miss Abel. Not a voting member of this body. Okay, Miss Emma, would you please show us this evening's agenda? First order of business on the agenda is approval of our FNF meeting minutes from the last time we met. I am looking for a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second. Second.
It's like an echo. That's very funny. Okay, any comments, corrections, things that were omitted? Seeing and hearing none, there's a motion on the table. We have to do a roll call vote because Dr. Silva is remote today. Dr. Silva, I'm going to do my best to call on you first every time, so no offense, but so I don't forget you. How do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Myself, yes, that passes 4-0. Next item on our agenda is a building and grounds report. I'll remind people watching at home that we typically get this in our packet and we look it over, and if any of you have any questions, you're supposed to email them to Ms. Puglisi and I, and then we try to get an answer before we even come to this meeting. That said, does anyone have any questions on the B&G report? Seeing none, it's not a voting item. Next item on our agenda, items for approval, are gifts to schools. I am looking for a motion to accept a total of $250 in the form of a gifts to schools under the Hannah Elementary School.
So
Motion
moved.
to accept.
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Does anyone have any questions on this item? Seeing none, roll call. Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Myself, yes, that passes 4-0. Next item is grants. I'm looking for a motion to accept the total grant amount of $26,500. This is in your packet. There are, that 26.5 is composed of one grant from the Massachusetts Life Science Center for STEM equipment for $25,500 and another $1,000 from the Northeast Network of STEM.
Motion.
Motion to approve. Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Are there any questions on this grant source or acceptance of this grant? Yes, Mr.
a
Manzo. Oh, sorry, Dr. Silva, hold, please.
What, so just wondering where this money's going and what it's paying for?
Absolutely. So both of these are at the high school. The Northeast Network STEM Week is to support projects that will then go towards a STEM Week presentation. They are the teacher who is leading this work is working with Dr. Thomas at the high school, who is our one of our curriculum directors there, to sort of broaden that. And the STEM equipment grant, I want to say that I believe might have robotics applications, but I would be remiss if I, or potentially speaking incorrectly, as I don't recall directly off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to send that back to you.
Dr. Silva.
That was my same question, but I do believe it's the robotics. Thank you.
All right, I will say to the body, if you're not comfortable voting, we can hold this till our next meeting. We're good? Dr. Silva, are you okay voting now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you get the first vote.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Myself, yes. That passes 4-0. Next item on our agenda is student activity accounts. I'll remind everybody that we have a policy that says our student activity accounts come to us whenever an account is to be created or retired, like the class of 2024. When they close out those accounts, and we're trying to keep them very current, so we're trying to close them out when a given class leaves or when an activity ceases to exist. And so we have before us this evening a request for 2 activity accounts. Would you like to speak to those, Ms. Puglisi?
Absolutely. So the first is for the GSA, the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. The club is already in existence. This just provides them with a, quote, savings and spending account so that they can, do fundraising. And so they had shared that as the club is becoming more active, they would like to be able to host more events and raise money that they can use to support charities and other activities within the queer community. So this would just give them an avenue to be able to do that. And then, do you want to do both at the same time, or do you want to vote on that one and then?
I'm looking to my body. Together or separate? Together. I got 2 togethers at the table. Dr. Silva, even if you said apart, you'd be outvoted. Sorry.
And then the other is the world language. And so when we had come together last month for the sort of annual approval of existing accounts, it was titled Foreign Language. Dr. Cushing had pointed out that that is sort of an outdated term for the same purpose, and had asked that we rename it in order to make sure that we could do it sort of appropriately in one fell swoop. I am recommending that the body approve the closure of the Foreign Language Student Activity Account, approve the creation of the World Language Activity Account, and transfer the funds to be used for the same purpose.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to take these 2 items collectively.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo and Ms. Coelho. I'm looking for questions, comments, shouts of joy. How about let's just be excited that there is a balance to be transferred.
Yes.
We love that. Okay, there's a motion on the table. Seeing no questions, the roll call. Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Myself, yes. That passes 4-0. The next item on our agenda, budget transfers, our favorites. The first budget transfer is number 1042. Let's start with a motion to approve, and then we can ask questions.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. How about we start with comments and then see if there are any questions? I'm sorry, Ms. Pugliese.
No, absolutely. So as you likely recall from our budget process, in this past budget cycle, we had held in a separate account, our sort of reserve for salaries and negotiations account, a sum for projection based on column moves and specialized degree placement. Column moves is an annual process. Teachers who take continuing education, master's or graduate level credits, are eligible to move through our salary scale. And those are referred to as column moves as they move from one column of the grid down to the next. In our most recent contract negotiation, we also had added language effective in the fall of this year that we would recognize for specialized degrees credits beyond 36 for a master's degree towards placement on the salary scale, where previously a master's degree was a master's degree, even if that master's degree was 84 credits, let's say. It counted the same and placing you on the grid. So there is some updated language for specialized degrees, and so this is the placement of both of those things. And then this is the transfer. So those have been awarded. Our folks will see it in the October 30th paycheck along with retro pay because it takes some time to process all of this paperwork. And so this is me transferring the money from the sort of the reserve account where we held it into the salary lines that correspond with the approved folks at the approved amounts. So it's really just bookkeeping.
Any questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
So I know that when we build a budget every year, you always have like you set something aside for what you project this number to be, but you're not really sure because you don't know who's going to obtain that master's degree and so on. So do you have a sense of how close you got?
I was pretty close.
Okay.
I was within $30,000
Okay.
of what it was. So we had
Up or down?
under.
Oh, okay. So
So-
you get to keep that.
Well, for now.
She's going out to dinner tonight.
And so we had in excess of 135 people apply,
a lot.
which is quite a few and substantially more than we've seen in some other years. And so we do know when we go through that process that not everyone will manifest because our staff do have to file their application to provide us with appropriate notice by December 1st. And so folks will file it by December 1st for application come the next September. And so it really says, like, I believe that I will be eligible
Okay.
during this process. And so there is that factor for, life happens, things change. And so we do sort of based on where we think things will likely fall. We come up with a generally, call it 90% or so
Okay.
will manifest. And so we use that as part of our budget projection. So we were pretty close. And so I'm
Is
pretty
that-
proud of myself.
Is that December 1st a hard deadline, or do you, so you really know that you're not going to go over that number?
Yes, so except that there are instances where, so I do it based on the information that we have. And our contract does prohibit movement of more than one column with a few exceptions. So if a staff person gets a CAGS or similar advanced certificate, they can jump columns and move all the way to the CAGS column.
Okay.
Similarly, if somebody gets a PhD, they can jump to the end. And so there are times where, somebody might say, this is where I believe I'm at on the salary grid, and I use that information. And it does not always say, people might actually be a little bit someplace else. And so it's with fair confidence. It's really more the place where the confidence could be missing would be my assumption that 90% of people will actually make that success into moving a next column, and it could be 95% or greater than that. Yeah,
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? Dr. Silva, I'm looking at you. You're a blank screen.
No questions.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Roll call. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Myself, yes. That passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is budget transfer 1043. It was in your packet. Let's start with a motion, and then we'll get an explanation from Ms. Emma, and then we'll see if we have any questions.
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Mr. Manzo, may I take yours as a second?
You bet.
Thank you, sir.
And so this is because we budgeted our sort of at the elementary level, our EL paras, so the paraprofessionals that help our English learner students and teachers. We had budgeted for them at the school where they had been primarily assigned last fiscal year, with the acknowledgement that they are really district-wide resources, and we deploy them to the schools that need them the most. And so this year, that meant that the Cove School did not need to hold that position, and rather that individual was working between the middle school and the Hannah Elementary School. And so this is just the reallocation of that salary budget so that we can code and report on that staff person in the correct location code.
Any questions? Seeing none, there's a motion on the table. A roll call. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Myself, yes, that passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda. Oh, my favorite and yours, policy. Miss Emma, are you? Yes, thank you. All right.
I can Vanna pretty good.
You can Vanna way better than I can. I'm excited that this doesn't have to be my job anymore, because it is kind of difficult to Vanna and run the meeting.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. Okay, so the first policy is on your screen. Foxtrot Alpha. I'm so proud of myself. I got the letters right today. I hear you, Mr. Crowley. I hear you. Good thing your microphone's on mute. So we, again, for people who don't kind of know yet the process, our policies are on a rotating, we look at them on a rotating basis because we have a policy that says we'll review all of our policies at least every 5 years. There are a select few that have to get reviewed more frequently than every 5 years. However, as a general rule of thumb, Miss Donna, the wonderful woman that she is, rotates and brings us some policies. Any given policy is tied to a subcommittee, and so that subcommittee looks at the policy and decides whether they want to revise it or not, and then it goes up to the body of the whole. It is possible that we look at it and we say, we will mark this simply as reviewed. It needs no changes. Okay, so that's where we are. And I will open the floor for whatever kind of motion wants to come forward. Maybe you want to mark this as reviewed. Maybe you want to propose a change.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
As is. As is, Dr. Silva?
Yes, sorry, as is.
Okay, so we'll mark it as reviewed, so no changes. Your motion is that we leave this guy the way he is.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Any further comments, questions? All right, there's a motion on the table. Dr. Silva? Oh, sorry, wait, there's a question at the table. Yes, Ms. Coelho?
So if I'm reading this correctly,
Oh, boy, quiz.
because I did not get to read this one earlier, that if someone in the school does pass away, that we cannot put up any kind of plaque or memorial for said student or teacher.
That's what it says.
No, permanent memorials within the
Yes.
school should be limited in form to perpetual awards or scholarships. Should be. We always have the right to override our own policies. So inside of a building, this is inside of a building, as opposed to, for instance, the benches that are outside, right, oh, I'm at the wrong school. Right over there if we were at the high school. Yes, Dr. Cushing,
Just curious, do we have a policy on that?
on outdoor memorials?
Just curious.
We do have a naming policy, so we do also have the ability to, like our Ayers Playground was named in memorial for Mr. King. And so we do have a policy that allows naming, and So I would consider, I mean, I guess you could consider that also a permanent memorial, but to the point of like a plaque or something like that, where I know very often folks like trees.
We like
No,
trees.
as example, like inside Centerville for Cameron Kirk and Riley Rocks and
Right, and
going
there's one
forward
in
like that.
McEwen. There's one when you walk into McEwen for a community member, after whom the building is named. So it's not impossible. It's just that as a general rule of thumb, we would say inside of the schools, we maybe don't want that. And again, we have a policy that we can always vote to override our policy. And the old ones, right? Any any permanent memorials in existence before the adoption of this policy can only be removed by a vote of the school committee. So that means none of those ones that you just named are going anywhere unless we as a body or the next seated body votes to do that. Would you like to make an amendment?
I just don't agree with this one because if we have another child like Cameron Kirk or Riley Rocks, we wouldn't be able to put up a display for them like we currently have.
And I think we would, because somebody would bring that forward and say, I think I want to vote to override or set aside FFA. And that is the vehicle with which we can do that.
Okay.
And it, to some extent, gives a little bit of pause, like, yeah, this is a tough one. I'm not gonna lie. I don't really want to talk about this, but we have to have, yes, Mr. Manzo.
So one of the things I've always enjoyed going to at the, near the end of the school year, is the awards and scholarships banquet at the high school, and hearing, that's when you really hear these stories. And I know it does mean quite a lot when you're walking through areas and you see the names, but when, for example, members of Riley's family get up and talk about what she meant, and in awarding some scholarship or award to a student, then you get the full impact of what that person means. And so I think in conjunction with that, with the telling of the stories, these are certainly individuals that will never be forgotten, because every year we remind ourselves how wonderful they are. And it's to a wider audience too. It's not just for the students that are going through this school and their families. Again, it's still great that it's there, but we get an opportunity every year to share those stories with the whole community, which I think is a great thing, and I wouldn't change any of that either.
No, that is true,
Yeah.
and I fully agree with that, but it's also to celebrate the school and where that child stood and came from for the other students.
So again, I will give you an opportunity for an amendment before we go vote.
Well, if I may, you don't like the whole policy, so it's
No,
kinda hard to
it's kind of hard to amend a policy that I
Just don't like.
just don't like because.
All right, so here's
if a
another
student
option. I mean,
has
we can
that, they
set it
should.
aside. We can table this for a month if you want a month to think about it. I mean, we're hopefully in plenty of time. Well, I know we're in plenty of time, right? It just so happens that this is the time for this one to come forward, but it could come forward in a month from now too.
Question?
I know I don't always have a lot to say, but this is a tough one.
It is a tough one. All right, I'm going to. Oh, yes, Dr. Silva.
Could I recommend that, like, the last sentence be a instruction on how one could go about addressing the school committee to set aside the policy for exceptions?
Meaning that we insert a line that references the policy that says we can set aside other policies.
Yes.
Like-
And that way, at least in the policy, it says that it's not etched in stone that you can't do it. There is a process.
Right. Should someone wish to override this particular, or any policy, we have a mechanism, and it's, I don't know the letters off the top of my head. Would that make you happier, Ms. Coelho?
Or just take out that whole sentence. Like a little picture or a little.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm making an executive decision. Dr. Silva, I would request that that you withdraw your motion. I believe it was your motion, and we table this.
I withdraw the motion.
Thank you. Okay, next policy. I'm bringing it up on my screen. And now I'm going to make Mr. Crowley sad because I only know Foxtrot Jumbo. The Tufts Jumbos. I thought that was a good guess. Okay, renovations and/or improvements to school or school sites by non-district parties. This is Beverly's own policy. Our little, that's what the comment there on the side is from Miss Bergeron. And so a lot of times, like the last policy we were looking at, it said the source was MASC. So Miss Emma, will you scroll to the bottom? So here we see the source is Beverly. This is our very own, for whatever reason, somewhere in the past, as far back as 2003, we, as a school district, adopted this policy. So I'm looking for a motion to either amend this policy or accept it as is, say that we've reviewed it.
I make a motion we mark as reviewed.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Do we have any comments, discussions, disagreements, desire to table this one as well? Okay, and I should say that we've been joined online by Miss Amy Blanchard. Welcome. And we've been joined in the room by candidate for Ward 4 School Committee, Lindsay Ducharme. Welcome. All right, seeing no comments, there is a motion on the table. Roll call, Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo. Yes. Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Myself, yes. That passes 4-0. In our third policy this evening, oh, there are way too many letters for this one. Gifts to and solicitations by staff. Very minor edits in the top portion of this document, and then a lot of red at the bottom. And no note from my friend, Miss Donna.
Yes.
You have something?
Yes. So there are, unmute, my apologies. So there are a small handful of notes. The additions at the bottom came from MASC, and they are in reference to, and I have some notes for other updates that I would like to suggest, including an update to the legal reference that I think just didn't make it over. The MASC revised version came with a reference to MGL 271-7A, which just is law relative to raffles and games of chance and the fact that they are prohibited for schools and municipal organizations. It's worthwhile noting that that does not apply to groups like booster groups, which are separate entities. And they are usually the ones. So if you see a raffle happening on school grounds, it's largely because it's being organized by a booster group.
So in that case, they wouldn't be considered as being organized by a school or a school sponsoring organization?
Mm-hmm. Right, the school is not the one sponsoring, so it would be sponsored by the 501c3. Insert your preferred sport and or performing arts group boosters.
Okay, so to be very clear, this policy is reiterating a state law.
Yes.
And to some extent, we have in the past tried to eliminate. Why would we reiterate something that's state law? It is, our policy manual is quite thick. So I'm going to put Dr. Cushing on the spot here for a minute and say, what do you think about, is it worthwhile for us to have this in the policy manual as a reminder, maybe to parents as well, but to staff as opposed to relying on state law?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'll make it brief. Especially given that we no longer print policy manuals and they're available online, I see no issue with having the reinforced language in the policy because I'm sure most people don't read state law. So at least it is in our policies that are made available to all staff ahead of time or during the first days of school when they go through the ARC-Ed training.
Okay, so given that, F and F members, I'm looking for a motion to approve, to approve this policy, to mark it as, I'll call on you in a minute, as reviewed.
Can I also just say one other quick thing?
Of course
Sorry,
you may. And then I'll give Ms. Puglisi a turn.
It is so easy to either through MASC's model policy handbook or our own, which is posted on the website, to search the document. So if anyone ever has any question as to what they're doing, while we were here, I was searching a few other districts with memorials, and the 3 or 4 that I looked on actually have no policy on it. Like they have not adopted that. But, you know, it's a great resource to be able to go and look across the state, many of the school districts that utilize the policy manual, and you're able to easily search and put it in. So there really is no excuse except for ignorance of the rules, which is not an excuse.
Okay, Ms. Puglisi.
I wanted to share 2 things. The first being that relative to adding that information, I do think that this is said far more clearly than the state law is, especially with the distinction relative to booster and parent groups are allowed to do raffles and staff people operating as staff people cannot. So I do think that that is a benefit of putting that language in here as it provides a more digestible version of that. And then I also had a thought or contribution relative to the fact that, as far as I'm aware, this body has not adopted MASC policy GBEBD, which is online fundraising and solicitations crowdfunding. It was sort of a relatively new one. That was added really as we started to see a boom in things like Donors Choose and GoFundMe of those lines. And so I wanted to bring forward for consideration whether we might want to bring that policy forward or to add sort of a much abridged version under the gifts for school use, because a very, very boiled down version of that policy says that gifts that are solicited through online fundraising become gifts to the schools and they are not gifts to the individual teachers. So it is so in the event that somebody crowd raises, for a new sensory swing to develop or a sensory room, much like we would with any of our BevEd grants, that does not then become the personal property of the teacher. That becomes the property of the district. So it could potentially be 1 or 2 sentences in the gifts for school use, or it could be a consideration for another policy, or we could do nothing with it.
All right, so I am going to ask the body to table this particular policy, bring it back next month in conjunction with the crowdsource funding policy, almost as a pair. And Ms. Puglisi, you and I will talk about the ordering of that, which one makes sense to go first, chicken and the egg. And I'm looking around the room. I'm looking for your hand, Dr. Silva, if anybody has a problem with that. And then we will also, I got a thumbs up, excellent. We will also make the edits. Yes, I'll call on you in just a second. We'll make the edits to add the MGL reference so that then it's ready to GO. Yes.
I did have a question, though. For the gifts, for the teacher gifts, like the class gifts. It's saying that the value is $150. Now, I understand that when my kids were younger, that a class gift like that for a calendar year would be acceptable because each kid would donate $5 for around the holiday season to give the teacher a class gift, and then do the same thing at the end of the school year, $5 to give the teachers an end of the year gift. And it was split up between the teacher and the para. And if you added both gifts together, it would be about that. But back then, there was only about 14 kids in the class. Now you're talking about anywhere from 18 to 22 kids being in a classroom. And if the PTO parents are going to do that to have the kids go in, the money's going to go a little bit higher. So are we going to allow a little bit of an exception for that so the teachers doesn't get in trouble?
We can't. It's a state law. It's a state law. That limit is set by the
So
state of
how-
Massachusetts.
How do they know when they're accepting this if it went over by, say, $17?
So the teachers have to take the same ethical training that we do, and they would have to report it. It's on them.
Well, how do they know what the parents spent if it did happen to go over by $17 or whatever? They're going to get in trouble for that, say.
So if they were given like a non-cash gift and they were given something that was purchased.
Like a
and
gift
cost
basket with
Right.
something.
I mean, we can't hold people accountable for things that they don't know. And I think, right, like it
I just wanted
is-
clarification, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, the teachers are aware, and I think if somebody were to provide them with like, a luxury brand handbag, they'd probably say this one is probably beyond the threshold. The other thing too is that these are like individual values, and so if there is a teacher and a para, and if they're individual gifts, then that 150 would be applicable to that individual. If it is, if there's funds raised for all the students and then it's sort of divvied up and split out, then that threshold would be applicable to each individual person. So the total spent by the class could be $300 if there was 2 staff people receiving that benefit.
Thank you.
All right, so we're just going to set this one aside until next month. We're going to add its MGL reference for next month, and we're going to bring it forward with GBCBD, the crowdsource funding. And our next item on our agenda are our finance reports.
Yes. So I am going to go through these hopefully pretty quickly because I want to be mindful of our time. And so I will bring them up. And then if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. At this point in the year, we are fairly on track for where we expect those things to be. There is no major concerns right now. We have 1/4 of our city appropriation receipted into the count. They do that in, quarterly journal entries. So that is where that is. Last meeting, we had quite a bit of conversation about our transportation receipts coming in a little bit less than we had budgeted. We are, again, a little bit under where we're budgeted. We will see a small trickle as we move through the remainder of the year as we have students who move into the district late and elect, transportation if they're eligible for paid transportation. We also do have a small amount of details that generate some revenue too. So we are a little bit underneath that threshold. It's probably unlikely that we'll recapture that entire $24,000 as we move through the year in that delta, but similar to last week, I am not too worried as we do have a small amount of carry forward balance in that revolving fund that will allow us to cover those costs.
All right, I'm looking around the room, Dr. Silva, I'm looking to see if you put your hand up. Anybody have any questions about our revenue report? Seeing none.
Seeing none, let's talk about some expenses. Again, I'm open to questions if anybody has one. We are right now still in a good place. We are not far enough into the year for me to be deeply worried about any of our things yet. We all have our fingers crossed for a nice mild winter, snow and ice as the weather starts to get colder. I start to think about that. So everybody think warm, sunny thoughts, please. And I'm keeping an eye on utility costs. We've had quite a few conversations relative to utility costs, and that's the one place right now that I'm just turning my eye to. As you likely recall, last year we did an LED upgrade project that was through National Grid and the city sustainability team. And we paid for that using some of our utility credits that we have from our electrical credits. And so while that did mean that there was no out-of-pocket, out-of-budget cost for that project, what it does mean is that it did eat up a bulk of some of those carried forward credit balances that we've been carrying for a long time, primarily at the high school. So where we had previously seen sort of a carry forward credit being applied to our high school electricity accounts, we are no longer seeing that benefit. And so we're just keeping an eye on that right now. We did make adjustments during the budget process, increasing our utility accounts as we saw utility costs going up and knowing that this was happening. And so now really the question is, did we guess that one right?
Right, and I would hope that we could get from Mr. Not Shirley,
Mr. Coffee.
Mr. Coffee, thank you, a report, maybe we can ask, that shows the usage, not the cost. I understand the costs are going
Right.
up, but we would hope that all those bulb replacements are saving us energy. And so we would hope to see a lower usage. That would be great if we could ask
Yeah.
Mr. Coffee for that.
Absolutely.
All right, so any questions on the expenses before Ms. Puglisi jumps into the meat and potatoes of today's meeting versus
Could I make
the,
a comment?
I'm sorry, Dr. Silva, will you please repeat?
Could I make a comment, please?
Yes, sir.
Kudos to the, whoever put the PowerPoint together with the attachment links. I think it's a much easier way to manage through the information with hypertext links to the bullet points.
That's Emma.
Yes, Emma, kudos.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, fabulous. And so now we are on to some fun as we start our budget preliminary pre-planning work. Given a lot of the conversations that we're hearing right now at a national level, at a local level, relative to revenue sources, I know that I had shared with the committee a report that was published by the Massachusetts Municipal Association in conjunction with a group out of Tufts University, really reflecting on the state of municipal finances and just sort of the growing pressures all around as we are really seeing revenues not keep pace with inflation and growing expenses. So there was a request to have some conversation around our other revenue sources. And so I just wanted to bring forward a couple of reminders about how we build our budget and our budget revenue sources, right? So primarily, our budget is funded from the general fund, which is comprised of local contributions, which is primarily your tax levy, Chapter 70 and other state aid. So on the city side, that's referred to as UGA. So that's, undesignated government assistance. And we talk about school side, city side, Chapter 70, UGA, and at the end of the day, it's all tax dollar or all dollars into the city, into the giant pot of money that then goes to fund all of the services paid for by the city. And so a negative consequence to one, even if it's not directly related to the school, is a negative consequence to us all. And then local receipts. And then we also have our special revenue funds, which include federal grants, state grants, private grants, and then our revolving funds. So those would be fees and receipts. And so off to the side there, that is a graph just showing the mix of how we expect those revenues to contribute to school funding. And a similar graph, this one is slightly updated, was included in our budget book. So just a reminder that the majority of our funding really does come from municipal sources, so from that general fund bucket of money. And so right now, I want to be clear that we are talking largely speculatively. And we are, however, seeing that, we are seeing ripple effect changes from changes to federal funding and federal laws. Federal grants are not the only place where we see federal funding in our overall revenue mix. The state budget relies on federal revenues and reimbursements. Revenue Commissioner Jeffrey Snyder told state leaders that federal tax code changes could reduce the fiscal 26 state tax collections by $650 million, and acknowledges that there are additional strains on the expense side relating to some of those legislative changes, specifically around mass health and healthcare generally. And so that means that could be $650 million less than budgeted for this year. And if it's that much this year, what could it be next year, right? We don't have yet numbers on that, but what it could mean is as there are less revenues on the state side, it could ultimately impact Chapter 70, unrestricted state aid. These are really, so the federal law that was signed in July of 25, which is referred to as the One Big Beautiful Bill, made dozens of changes to the tax code that affect how Massachusetts can collect, potentially through interactions with state law, and also caused a tax revenue drop that will substantially decrease direct federal funding as well. So we will see what that means for our friends at the state and really what that trickle-down effect will be. There's also a number of potential changes, impacts to our funding as a result of changes to public assistance program. So you're likely aware of the Medicaid in schools reimbursement, which is a process by which school districts are able to seek federal funding for medically necessary health services provided to eligible students. Often those students are on individualized education plans, so IEPs. And we can receive reimbursement for direct services and related administrative costs through a claiming process. However, reduced eligibility under federal laws means that less students are eligible, and then we would be able to claim less things, resulting in less revenue. Medicaid reimbursement does go into the local receipt bucket on the city ledger. So it doesn't come into a revolving fund directly managed by the schools, but again, is part of that overall revenue mix that contributes to overall city funding. And currently we bring in about $400,000 a year through the Medicaid and schools reimbursement. Similarly, public assistance, including Medicaid eligibility, factors into how the state counts low-income students. And that low-income student count is a large contributing factor to the Chapter 70 formula. There's a tiered system that I will show you on the next slide that basically the larger the percentage of your population that is considered low income, the larger that factor in the formula is for that foundation budget figure. For Beverly, I am not worried about these changes, given that we are one of 232 minimum aid districts. It is not, this factor alone will not be enough to sort of swing our Chapter 70 status and move us out of that low, that minimum aid category. However, there is some real risk for school districts that might be, it could really swing and it could be really influential, and it might not need to be a large number of kids. And it also, while we would then no longer be categorizing them as low income, which is done at the state level through a process called direct certification, where the state works internally with their own agencies. So students who are eligible for, different public assistance programs automatically get qualified and reported through this direct certification process. It reduces the administrative burden on the district's end and really helps ensure that that people are captured so that we can do it. And so it does not mean that there would be a change to anybody's financial realities. It just means that we would no longer be counting them because they would not be eligible for those services.
Right. So when we hear that, for instance, a whole bunch of people are going to be thrown off of SNAP, then that would ripple into our direct cert,
Correct.
just to be very explicit.
Yes.
Okay.
And then.
Maybe I didn't want to go to this part of the meeting. This is worse than the memorial policy.
And so while I don't believe that low-income designations in the changes to low-income designations in the short term would impact our Chapter 70 formula distributions, that information is also used by the state for Title I eligibility. So a school has to have 35% low-income students to be considered for Title I eligibility. And so again, if we are counting less people, then it is likely that, or it is possible, I don't want to say it is likely, but it is possible that that could influence eligibility for Title I down the road, or at certain schools. Again, not because the demographics of our students are different, they're just not being captured, as well as eligibility for other state and federal grants.
And I'm just going to interrupt again to say we already know that even if we don't change our eligibility, that Title I has been cut by 26%. We can round that down to 25.
You're getting ahead of me.
Oh, my bad.
It's okay.
I'll go back over here to making notes in my notebook. I'm sorry.
And then the other thing that we would just want to keep an eye on is, again, so Massachusetts is one of a handful of states that has universal free meals. That funding is at the state level could be reduced from trickle-down implications. It could have trickle-down implications at the local level. So again, the Universal Free Meals Program is funded in part through federal reimbursements to the state based off of students that are counted as low income from participation in programs like SNAP. And so again, it could just really be that trickle down, no longer qualifying as eligible, no longer identified, no longer federal reimbursements coming to the state, and what does that mean as the state balances their budget? So again, lots of speculation at this point in time, a lot of what ifs, but a lot of them. So this is just a snapshot of, which is very hard to see, and I apologize, just what those different groupings are. So there's 12 different low-income groups, and they range towards additional monies counted into the foundation formula, from $4,000 and change to $9,500 and change in this fiscal year. And if anybody is really, really interested in the foundation budget and formulas, I do have a hyperlink here that will take you to the workbook provided by DESE. So you can really enjoy all things Chapter 70. I'm also going to use this opportunity for my captive audience to remind you that the Healy-Driscoll administration is putting together a series of listening sessions relative to the Chapter 70 formula, the first of which is tomorrow night at Masco. And so that is the closest one regionally to us. There is also another one, I believe. I wrote it down. I didn't write it down. A little bit later in the month, that is virtual. So if folks are unable to attend and are interested in advocating, there's also a virtual opportunity. There's also a press release from the department that has some links or email addresses where you can also send commentary if these listening sessions are not available to you. But I did want to share that.
I shared them last week in my lengthy weekly memo, but I will also be pushing out later tonight an email novella. I will also push out an email to the whole district, just that section for parents, caregivers, staff, anyone, to go to Masco and advocate, because I think that's the only way. Any legal challenges to ed reform have basically been exhausted. And so it is really only through the legislature that the funding formula can now change.
And so there's also, like Lorinda foreshadowed, potential impacts to entitlement grants. And so we really won't know how that fully shakes out for FY27 for us until the federal FY26 budget negotiations are settled. So right now we are looking at speculation and interpretation of it proposals from professional networks, as our state agency partners haven't given guidance and likely won't until there is a firm plan to give guidance on. So I've heard very little from the Massachusetts Department of Education about, what to expect. There's lots of questions out there, and right now they're just saying, let's wait and see what happens.
Yet it's been published already that Title I's getting 26% cut. So your statement about we don't know and we're speculating, is that about Titles 2 through 4?
So, and like what form it will take. Will it take the form of a block grant? Will there be other changes to provisions that might change? So generally block grants have fewer sort of provisions around them. And so will we see a change in the way that Title I could be implemented or things like that? We are moving forward with an understanding that Title I will be reduced, a expectation that Title III initiatives will likely not be funded. Title III supports our multilingual learners. And so while none of that has been definitively said to us by DESE, these are reasonable expectations. And so I did share, just as a point of comparison, what our federal entitlement grants have looked like going back a handful of years. And so, right, that 25% of Title I could be a swing of $120,000, give or take some. No, that one got fancy on us. And so I just wanted to reiterate what the current provisions for our title grants are, right? So Title I is really focused on closing the achievement gap, and they really do look at that relative to students of low income or other designated need. Title II provides professional development support. Title III supports our English learner population. Title IV supports access to high quality educational experiences. I have not heard, and I'm not anticipating changes to our 240 grants at this time, unless you've heard anything.
Only that they dismantled the entire committee, except for 5 people, so there's no longer any oversight.
Yes.
Other than that, I have not heard anything about the funding, the amount of funding.
Right. So we are staying tuned. And then Perkins provides technical education opportunities. And so again, right, so I said possibly here. I know it's pretty definitive. I guess I'm somewhere in denial. So we can expect reductions in funding. Title I, decreased by 25%. Title III initiatives possibly no longer being supported with federal dollars. If there's a conversion to a block grant, how that grant would be disseminated, again, lots of unknowns there. And so, would Massachusetts DESE attempt to allocate those funds proportionally to the way they have? It's unclear at this time based on the information that I have. And then there's also questions of just long-term availability going beyond 27. Generally, block grants so entitlement grants tend to grow as need grows. Block grants tend to stay the same. And so you can do less with them over time because the same number of dollars just don't go as far as time progresses. And so onto a slightly lighter topic, maybe revolving funds, fees and receipts, including, so our revolving funds are funded through state reimbursements and fee collections, but also to emphasize that changes at the federal level will impact our state budget like we talked about before, which could impact things like our circuit breaker reimbursement, because the circuit breaker reimbursement is contingent on the state budget. And so again, availability of funding could have an adverse impact. And then user fees, which are fees charged for participation or services that benefit a paying party, things like our athletic fee and things like that. And so likely during our budget process, we will revisit those fees because we have not updated many of those in 10 or more years. And so just as part of a healthy budget process, look at those as well. And so then the last item on our agenda is a community survey. So we talked about this briefly at our last meeting. And so the district leadership team has assembled a survey to solicit stakeholder feedback as part of our pre-planning process. I have a copy linked that I will share with you. It is currently in draft form. And so it is in Google Forms right now. We are still, having considerations relative to question formatting options. So like there isn't a rank order option available in the more traditional sense where you get to drag and drop in Google Forms. And so we're looking at, opportunities for translation, question formatting options, survey management, and response analytics. And so we tried to follow some best practices, keeping it short in length to, keep respondents engaged, use of majority close-ended question and limited open-ended questions so that we have more data integrity in those answers. It's easier to analyze the data, to have a little bit more tangible feedback, and we attempted to use neutral language with balanced answers. And so this, again, is a draft copy. And so the intent of this survey is to really help us align resources with student needs and community priorities. The intent is to make this survey available to stakeholders across the city. So whether that is students, parents and caregivers, staff members, or just community residents, really to allow opportunity for voice in there across a number of different stakeholders. And so with the intent that people will be able to share with us how they believe our current funding levels meet needs in certain areas, how well folks feel that the district spending currently aligns with our mission and strategic goals, giving folks an opportunity to rank order their perception of the importance of investment in next year's budget dollars, and an opportunity for feedback that if there needed to be reductions, sort of prioritization. So really get an understanding from community where they would like to see resources put, and if we were in a situation where resources needed to be reallocated, their perception of where they could be reallocated from. And then, of course, an open-ended opportunity for folks to share anything else that they might want to that was not captured above.
And when are the timeframes around sending that out and closing it, like stopping receiving? Do we
So
have-
I believe, so again, it's still in draft form, but I believe our intention is to send that out probably by the end of this month. And then
Spooky.
It'll go with our black and orange. And then hopefully keep it open for a couple of weeks with a couple of different opportunities for push, So we have had conversations relative to how do we engage different populations? How do we engage our students? How do we engage our, our parents and our caregivers? So whether that's, blasts from superintendents, principals including it in their weekly memos, at the high school level, if there's, if we can get the student council engaged to, make iPads available or QR codes and get kids engaged in that manner to get student feedback as well. And then looking to some of our other community partners to say, like, can you help share this on your channels as well so that we really can reach as broad a scope as we can.
All right, I'm looking around the room. We have, it's a miracle, 10 minutes before our meeting officially has to end. I have a question for Ms. Puglisi about something we just talked about. However, I'm looking around the room before I call on myself. Yes, Mr. Manzo.
Just to say, a great job as always. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Silva,
I'll say.
okay. Okay, so my question, to some extent is really not for you, Emma, but rather for, Dr. Cushing. At some point in time during the year, we usually schedule our legislators to come in. And, I'm wondering if we can't try to have them in earlier to make sure the conversation about about the impact and what we would hope could possibly happen at the state level. And I understand that it's dependent on state collections as well. However, we know right now that the Fair Share Amendment last year, for instance, collected twice as much as they anticipated. And prior to these recent changes at the federal level, I was advocating at the state level for Fair Share Amendment funds to go into the SOA and to restructure the SOA so that it was a graduated, as opposed to a cliff, a graduated benefit system. Given this change in landscape, I would be more interested in hearing our legislators say, yes, we are planning to quote unquote fortify what we have, or to have that conversation about what options are there, because instead of increasing SOA, to hold steady would be incredible, based on the uncertainty coming down the pike. And so if we could say, yeah, somebody has done the projections, how much Title I across the state, how much free lunch would cost if we lose the federal funding across the state, how much Title III, right? The things we expect to go away, and therefore it's this much money, and we have this much in the Fair Share Amendment funds. That would be a great thing to hear. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to do that. However, somebody needs to be asking for those computations to be run. And I asked this poor woman a lot of questions, and I asked her to generate me a lot of numbers, but I don't think she can generate me those numbers. So if we could start those conversations with our legislators and have them maybe come in here sooner rather than later, I think that would be incredibly beneficial.
I'm happy to work on that. I would see the November 19th or the 1st of December meeting as the first two opportunities. I think we're going to have a full agenda on November 12th, reviewing some MCAS data and some other items. So I will shoot for November 19th, or I don't know the date off the top of my head for December, but the 1st of December meeting.
And again, that's me. Maybe the rest of our body doesn't want that. Maybe the body, by definition, our body will have at least 4 new members come January 2nd, 3rd, whatever day we get sworn in. So that's me right now. I think that it's a very uncertain time, and our charter, this group in particular, right? We're supposed to be worried about the finances, and I think there is a very serious concern about the finances. And so if we can, in addition to going to the Chapter 70 meeting tomorrow night and encouraging other people to do that, I think an SOA approach is far more likely than opening back up Pandora's box of Chapter 70. But that's me. Regardless, we're going to need some help. I think we're going to need some help. All right. Anybody else? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, non-debatable. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
myself, yes, that passes 4-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. The time is 7:33, and today is Wednesday, October 22nd. This is a committee of the whole meeting of the Beverly Public Schools School Committee. We are using a hybrid fashion this evening to allow for remote participation. Although at this time, we don't have any members of the school committee joining us remotely. I will do a roll call after I finish this preamble. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening in person, and also want to thank BevCam for making this meeting available via streaming and broadcasting on Channel 6 and High Definition 1073, as well as the YouTube channel. Thank you so much, BevCam. The Beverly School Committee has been taking advantage of the ability to use hybrid meeting options due to laws that were passed in June of 2021 and have been further extended. This allows public government and boards to have provisions, among other things, to hold meetings remotely, so long as we allow safe public access in real time. So thank you, BevCam, again, for streaming this meeting. As a note, Beverly also has prior approval through the Attorney General's office to have remote participants, although when we revert to that provision, the chair and quorum do physically need to be present. Again, tonight is a committee of the whole meeting. We have a pretty packed agenda, including reports from our superintendent, some policy work by the body, and an executive session. At the time that the committee enters into executive session, we will thank you all for joining us and allow you to leave the building, as well as BevCam. I think that's it for the preamble. So we called to order at 7:33 p.m. It's now time for me to conduct the roll. We have Mayor Cahill in person.
Here.
I'm just going to go down the line. Ms. Visnick. Here. Ms. Coelho.
Here.
Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Here.
And I'm Rachel Abel. Our colleague Jeffrey Silva, I think, has dropped off the remote option this evening. Is feeling under the weather. We are also joined in person by our superintendent, Dr. Peter Cushing.
Here.
Director of Finance, Emma Puglisi.
Here.
And we're joined online by Dr. Andre Morgan. Here. And Miss Amy Blanchard. Here. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, our first order of business this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to call on Miss Robinson this evening to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Robinson. Our next order of business is the approval of the meeting records from our 24th of September Committee of the Whole meeting. May I entertain a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Were there any edits or corrections that anyone noted? Since we're all in person, I'll call by hand. All those in favor of passing the motion, 6-0. Thank you. Next, Dr. Cushing, if you don't mind, when you are ready, the next 4 agenda items belong to you, and we'd love you to take it away.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you very much. Thank you to the public for joining us this evening. So as I start my report, I just want to read a few things before I talk about the actual slide deck I prepared. So earlier this week, I was invited to partake in the Beverly Education Foundation meeting. I want to thank Anna and Doug for their invitation and the opportunity to meet that body. I really appreciate the work that they do to support our students and programs across our schools, and just really respect how much work has gone into it, and having worked in other districts and not having the support of an educational foundation due to a rural situation or one that maybe have fallen by the wayside and people are now trying to restart. Just the robustness and the opportunity that evening to be a part of that was really warm, inviting, and just want to thank them publicly for everything they do and that opportunity. Also, last week, we had a home unified basketball game. Unfortunately, a meeting I was in went extensively longer than anticipated, but it was extremely important. But I have seen some great pictures, and I'm just going to get confirmation that those can be posted in my next memo will be far less novella-esque, and we'll have more pictures than this last one. I do try to get as many student pictures in as possible because they're the reason that we're all doing this work. But the unified basketball, if you didn't make it last week, as we have more unified sports and events coming up this year and in the future, please make sure that every member of the community really takes advantage of this. There are tremendous opportunities to see our students collaborating together and having a whole lot of fun. This year, we will have a special education circuit breaker audit, a food services procurement and operational audit. Those will be coming through from DESE. Just wanted to make the committee aware of them. There's nothing for the committee to really do, but just wanted to make sure that you were informed that those will happen. I have full confidence in our ability to respond well to those audits. Having been part of a food services audit before, I have no doubt that ours here will be excellent. Finally, in just my open comments, a few moments ago, I emailed the entire district, and that included students, staff, administrators, and all parents and caregivers regarding the Chapter 70 public forums that are being held across the state. The local one is tomorrow evening. Usually these are, as my phone is now blowing up from all the people who might have away messages. Let me just set that aside. The reality is that many times the forums are actually not held anywhere near us for whatever reason, and require quite a drive. Tomorrow evening, it's being held at Masconomet Regional High School in Topsfield. You can reference the time in the email, but there will also be an online virtual on Tuesday, November 18th. This is really important for the public to come out and speak. I also emailed links that people can email their comments. The Chapter 70 formula, while many people have worked really hard to try to fix it over the years and try to set it up right at the inception of education reform, there are still significant challenges that we face as school districts. And so I think it is really important when we talk about funding to not just talk to the local level, to also talk to the governor. The governor is hosting these listening sessions, and to make sure that your voice is heard to your representatives and senators about the time to act. So if anyone would like to comment on the Chapter 70 forums or anything like that, I'm happy to pause at this time.
Dr.
Sorry.
Cushing,
Yes.
since you're inviting us to speak, I think we all know how important it is, and we all know how it's been a struggle to be a community with a lot of property wealth along the coast that kind of belies all the need in our community. It's been a challenge to be a community that's been minimum aid almost every year for 33 years, right? So I think we know there's a lot about the formula in its multiple iterations that is never really done right by our district, and encouraged at the chance to have a conversation so close to home. You said the governor is hosting. Is the governor going to actually be at Masco tomorrow night? too?
I don't know that. I know that it says the Healy Driscoll administration
Right.
is posting these, but nothing I've said says that Governor Healy herself will be there.
I mean, either way, I know they're focused in on it. So hopefully, these will be helpful. You're going to be able to be there? you
I
said?
am, yes.
What's the time on it?
I just have to verify that. Say again? 4:30. Thank you.
Well, that's
Yes.
not tomorrow night. It is tomorrow. Okay, all right, 4:30. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Presumptive Future School Committee Member.
I want my money.
Sorry, the problem of having too many tabs open
We're hopeful that when Dr. Cushing's ready to share, it's going to present. I've alerted, yeah.
Tim's looking around and controls meeting.
Yeah. We just want to make sure. It worked in their prior meeting, and we haven't changed the meeting.
Yeah, he's probably just.
Yeah.
Apologize, just give me one moment.
No rush. While you're taking your time on that, I know that we, as school committee members, have had opportunities to meet with our elected officials at the state level. Joan Lovely had an opportunity for us to speak directly to the members of the Ways and Means Committee about the formula challenges particularly faced by Beverly, being sort of flip-flopping and mostly stuck in the minimum aid community. I think that we also need to take advantage of opportunities to have our elected leaders join. I know in the prior meeting, the Standing Committee on Finance and Facility, Ms. Visnick raised the question about possibly having our elected leaders here. We typically have them once a year to the committee of the whole or the regular committee. And if the body so wishes, the chair can do some outreach to see if any or both of our legislators are available for an upcoming meeting, or perhaps a special meeting. Okay. I will take that as an action item to follow up with Senator Lovely and Representative Bowen, and anyone else they might be able to bring along with them.
All right. So one other thing is that in my weekly memo last week, we have had some transportation challenges even since I presented an update 2 weeks ago with on-time arrivals for our buses. I want to be clear to all of our families that our transportation staff is working diligently and working very hard to address these. But we are in the process of onboarding about 5, if I remember off the top of my head, new CDL drivers. That will take a little bit of time, but we are anticipating that we should see our first driver onboarded by November 1st. And a CDL driver, I detail it in the report that I will publish for everybody. About 21 questions that either parents have posed or I wanted to make sure that we provided answers to, so that families and caregivers understand this is not something that we are happy with, not our transportation director, not anybody. Our transportation director frequently drives runs in the morning to make up when people are out sick, but this is a problem that we have to solve. We have to make sure our kids are getting to school on time, and being here is a critical aspect, as that is one of our major goals as a district, is making sure that students are here on time. So that should be ready either tonight or tomorrow for publication as a special edition. But just wanted to make sure everybody was aware. All right, on November 4th, we will be having our Professional Development Day. So for all students in the district, no school. Sorry. It's an exciting day for students. I understand for parents and caregivers that is always a challenge, but making sure that our teachers and staff have really robust professional development is important. We are working with a professional development committee made up of district and school leaders and members of both units A and C to make this happen. We are also working to make sure that we're communicating well, and I may have had a misstep in my understanding of booking the day, but the team does seem to be working very well with us on that. So I just want to share that we'll be, we've already started to work on a plan to make sure that in between meetings, we're keeping each other updated and apprised and working together. The two keynote speakers are focusing on AI. They're focusing on it in different realms, so they are complementary and not going to be repetitive. Greg actually did not realize this until recently, graduated shortly after me at St. Anselm College, and Carrie graduated several years after me at St. Anselm College, which didn't realize. But Greg has presented in the district previously and is a regional expert, probably national expert at this time. He served on the AI Commission, and the document that I shared out in my weekly memo towards the end, if you were able to read that far, on AI, was partly authored by him and the committee. So he brings a lot of experience, has presented to the staff before. We're also inviting in the YMCA's educators to participate in some of the events of the day. The second keynote speaker, Kerry Gallagher, just so you know, Greg is an independent consultant now, but had previously worked most recently as the Information Technology Director at Triton Regional School District. Kerry Gallagher is the Executive Director of Connect Safely, and that's a national organization focused on making sure that children are connecting safely. Right now, it is estimated that approximately 35% of youth are using AI as a companion, as they would a friend or a romantic partner or something in those lines. So she is going to speak. She is an assistant principal of teaching and learning at St. John's Preparatory School. She is going to speak on protecting our students, the use of Gen AI to create sexually explicit imagery. And so to work with our teachers to understand that. So they're both going to be speaking on AI, but they are complementary topics. And given that the YMCA does so much with us, we wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to come in and participate. I've also shared with you these are the first, so we're going to break up the day in a morning session, then a breakout, some ed camp style, some workshop seminars. Given recent events in the district that I spoke about in my memo last week about the tragedy that occurred about a week and a half ago, we are asking HAWK, which when I grew up stood for Helping Abused Women and Children. However, it is now Healing Abuse Working for Change. They are going to be doing 2 seminars in the morning, one right after the first speaker and one right after the second speaker. So they will be presenting. We have also had some instances of concern when it comes to our LGBTQIA plus population. We will be addressing that more publicly coming up soon. But we wanted to be very clear on this. And Jason Wheeler from the Massachusetts Safe Schools Initiative will be present as well to do a seminar in the morning. And what I want to say is that we're trying to respond as quickly as possible to challenging situations in a national climate that is targeting our most vulnerable students. Whether we're talking about special education in the way that the Department of Education is currently being gutted and the assault on students with special needs, or we're talking about the continuous rhetoric against transgender or gender nonconforming students, there seems to be a pervasive feeling of hate at the national level that we cannot simply assume because we are in the bastion of democracy and liberal thought that those things will not infect our youth. When I sat in this room and interviewed before you a few months ago, I said that there are moments that we have to put ourselves in harm's way and defend our students. This will be a time like that. So I will provide more details as I can, but I do want to address it publicly as best I can at this time to say that we have had some incidents and we will be addressing them as quickly as possible because they need to be addressed as quickly as possible. Sorry if I flubbed that or messed it up, but this is who I am. I just call it like it is, and we'll go on with the remainder of the PD day. So those are 2 sessions that we are adding to be responsive to situations that we have seen in the district. We're also, these will be the second session. What's amazing is, and I am so buoyed by is that the overwhelming majority of these are produced by our educators. All right, our educators are willing to step up, prepare, plan, and give of themselves to their peers. That is really amazing and really awesome. Some really great seminars in there. The ones I mentioned from Hawk and from the Safe Schools Initiative have not been added yet, but they will be in the next day or so. All right, the next piece of my presentation are goals of the superintendent. Yes.
Thank you for, I was just wondering, these sound like great workshops, everything. Can I ask how much we pay our presenters for their, like the keynote speakers? For like how much the district is paying the keynote speakers for the two that you spoke of, Carrie and
Yeah.
Greg?
I don't know, honestly, the morning speaker, but I know the afternoon speaker is 3,000, which is significantly less than normal keynote rates. It's 2,000 for the keynote and 1,000 for the seminar.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes. Morning is about the same.
And are educators being paid for that?
Yes.
Same amount?
No.
Thanks.
So, moving on to the evaluation of superintendents uses the Massachusetts model educator evaluation. And for educator evaluation, I shared my goals with you earlier this week, not as early as I would like to have. The annual evaluation for superintendent includes 5 required steps. So self-assessment, which is late spring or summer, which is essentially not really done, as I've been told, for new superintendents. However, I would consider my entry plan as that self-assessment, that idea of where I need to really get to know the district and be a part of it, and also to learn and grow as part of the new superintendent induction program. Step 2 is analysis, goal setting, and plan development, which is summer, early fall, which technically we are still early fall. Step 3 is plan implementation, collection of evidence throughout the school year, a formative assessment evaluation mid-year, and a summative evaluation late spring or summer. So for experienced superintendents, sorry that got cut off, for the cycle can be extended to 2 years at the discretion of the committee. As you know, I am not experienced in this role just yet. So I'm not sure why this is cutting off like that. All right, so step 2 is analysis, goal setting, and plan development. School committee and superintendent review the proposed goals, the key strategies, and benchmarks. The committee reviews the rubric to clarify expectations and ensure alignment between the proposed goals and the indicators that have been set forward. Committee must approve the goals, which then becomes the superintendent's annual plan. The approved plan outlines key actions, timelines, benchmarks, progress and outcomes, and evidence that will be used. And the goals have to be SMART, which I'm sure everyone knows: specific, strategic, measurable, action-orientated, rigorous, realistic, results-focused, and time-tracked, so they actually get done. And then plan implementation, steps 4 and 5. Yes, sorry.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to go back to the SMART goals. I just had a question. I know at my institution, the last 2 ones where I've worked, we've used SMART-T goals, and I thought DESE had adopted that, but I could be wrong. We were adding the IE to add inclusive and equitable, but is that not a DESE designation? Is that just something that people are doing individually?
People may be doing it individually. I'm happy to do it as well. This slide was taken directly from DESE's model language.
Okay. Yeah, I somehow was under the impression that DESE was adopting the SMART-Y goal protocol too. But I know your goals are inclusive of that, but that was one way I'd been seeing that handled recently. So I just wanted to see if that was just an individual choice. It sounds like it might be for institutions.
I'm happy to go that route. I think given where we are and given what I also spoke about earlier this evening, I think inclusive and equitable.
Yeah, we'll take a look. I mean, it's called SMART goals. That's how I do my team goals, but it just adds that intentionality to make sure they're inclusive and equitable. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
So plan implementation, so I'll implement the annual plan with the committee's assistance as appropriate. School committee members and the superintendent collect, share, and regularly discuss evidence of progress on goals and performance. The evidence should communicate progress towards professional practice, student learning, and district improvement goals. Those are included in this. Most of my goals, just so you're aware, are essentially set by DESE for Appendix E of the superintendent, for new superintendents. And then regular focused updates around goal progress and public meetings are critical for transparency to ensure there are no surprises at the end of the cycle for anybody. Oh, sorry, I missed one. So judgments are based on observations and artifacts of professional practice and additional evidence relevant to one or more performance standards, including staff feedback. Sorry, thought that was me. All right, so my 4 goals, just quickly. The 3 goals, as I mentioned, are described in Appendix E as starting points for this collaborative effort. And I decided to add a 4th goal related to safety. So the first is effective entry and direction setting, maintaining momentum during the transition, professional practice, new superintendent induction program, and district safety and preparedness initiatives. So by late spring, the district will have a shared understanding among key stakeholders of its most critical needs, as well as an established and widely understood process to identify effective strategies, goals, and measurements for improvement. So by mid-August, present a written entry plan that outlines all the things that were outlined in my entry plan. By April, I did change the dates just a little bit. Many people have suggested that this initial date was February. The second date was, I think, March. Many people have suggested that given some of the complexities coming off of last year for Beverly, to extend the timeline of the entry plan and really make sure that all voices are heard. And I think that's really going to require going out to some community partners as well to make sure that those traditionally marginalized voices or traditionally unheard voices are heard. So by April, I will complete and report out a report of entry findings that synthesizes all of the collected evidence, identifies our strengths and most critical areas for improvement, and recommends next steps for further study. And by May, a collaborative process to engage stakeholders to identify strategies for improving student learning and strengthening district systems of support. I see May actually as being a culminating point. I want to make sure that we are engaging stakeholders. We talked in the last meeting and we will talk again in this meeting about a budget survey, but I want to make sure that we are engaging stakeholders with lots of voice over time this first year and continuing out throughout my tenure. Goal 2. All right. Ensure continued district progress during the leadership transition by collaborating with principals and district leaders to sustain and advance key district and school improvement goals. So by November 1st, I will have finished reviewing and establishing all student learning, professional practice, and improvement goals with our principals and other district administrators. By March 1st, conduct a formative evaluation conference with each principal and district administrator under my supervision. And by late spring, conduct a minimum of 3 school visits to each school. Those visits are already well underway and have already been doing walkarounds at all of our schools. I believe I have the preschool to do a formal walkthrough, but have been to all of our other schools thus far. By June 30th, analyze progress and goals and complete the superintendent evaluation reports for all supervisees. So make sure that summative evaluation reports for all supervisees. Goal 3, professional practice. Participate in and strengthen my leadership capacity in strategic development, data analysis, and instructional leadership through active participation in the first year of the new superintendent induction program. So there are 8 full-day NISIP sessions. There are also virtual sessions. The full days are held at the center of the universe, otherwise known as Marlborough. Sorry. Last time it took an hour and 15 minutes to get there. Meet with the assigned coach at least monthly. I have frequent conversations, not only with my own coach, but with several other seasoned superintendents to provide insight and advice as necessary to really try to understand and help lead Beverly where we need to be, which is making sure that we are focused on improving student outcomes. And then the last goal that I chose to add on is the superintendent. This did not change, but I would like to say there is an established district safety task force. So I would like to remove that, as I've met with people on that task force, but the superintendent will collaboratively lead a district safety task force to strengthen school safety systems and improve community awareness and readiness. We're already planning an early December parent webinar so that parents can fully understand the I Love You Guys standard response protocol. It's definitely different from Alice, but it provides clear language for parents, caregivers, for first responders, and for educational personnel to really understand and be very careful with language. No longer are words like shelter in place used, but it goes from hold to shelter, lockdown, evacuate, and as it would figure, I'm blanking on my, secure. And we will provide detailed information on that in a safety webinar for parents and caregivers in early December. So to provide that for the community. So key actions, we'll make sure the task force is fully assembled by November 15th. We've already been meeting some elements thereof. Conduct a safety systems review by December 15th. Develop a district-wide safety communication plan. Implement education and training by May 1st. And evaluate and report out for all stakeholders by June 30th. I have to say that I've met with Tim Mezza, Steve Fiore, and Aaron Fitzpatrick, and I'm very impressed where the district is already. I am also very impressed and cannot say this enough, and I think I've said it previously, but with the security systems that the district has invested in, it is not an understatement to say that Beverly is very ahead of the curve. And really appreciate all the people who worked really hard to make sure that those systems are in place and updated frequently. So those are my goals at this point. If anybody has any comments, edits, or anything else that you would like to see changed, added, or otherwise included.
So just to remind folks, we do need to approve these goals and set them for the superintendent for this fiscal year 26 so that they may be used later for the evaluation.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Is there a second?
Second.
I think I heard Kim. Okay. So as presented by Dr. Cushing, the goals for FY26 are the 4 as outlined in the presentation. Are there any comments or questions? Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. The point that was raised by Mrs. McKenzie DeFranza, and spoken about by the superintendent about the I and the E, the inclusion and equity piece. I know it was it earlier in the goals or before you went into the goals? I think it was the smart versus the smarty.
Yes, yep, prior to going into the goals.
Okay, gotcha. So maybe just, I would second that emotion from the earlier conversation, that it makes perfect sense to go right ahead and include that in the whole process. Thanks. I mean, that's just two of us. Should other people weigh in?
Did I see another hand at the end? No. Just historically, I can't remember when Dr. Churchek made her first presentation. With the NISIP program, it's a little bit more prescribed than would typically come to a school committee, since he isn't brand new superintendent, is part of that program. So I appreciate the presentation. As Dr. Cushing gains more experience, the future sets of goals can come in slightly different formats and include different items off of the rubric. We are familiar at the end of Dr. Churchek's tenure where there's an actual rubric that DESE provides, and it provides key indicators. I'm sure as we get further along in the development of these goals, we'll be able to map a little bit so that when the evaluation period starts in the late spring, it will make a little sense, and we're able to more easily combine our feedback. The executive secretary actually will have the job of taking feedback from the individual members of the committee and compiling it into a composite. And it's the composite evaluation that would then be voted on by the body. So there's no individual evaluations of a superintendent against these goals. It's a collective body, and it's a little peculiar to people who haven't been sitting here maybe for a while, but it's one of the roles of the school committee to hire, fire, and evaluate the superintendent. Basically, only as a body, the school committee is your boss, and you get an annual review. But we can only work as a body, and so that's why there's a multi-step process and a little bit of a empirical formula for when the review happens, looking at the evidence as presented. Usually it's in a Google Drive that's secure, and student information is obscured. So just to lay the framework, these goals will be revisited in the spring as a group. Okay. I don't know if that prompted any more questions or concerns, or if we're ready to vote to allow Dr. Cushing to adopt this set for this year. Seeing no questions, all those in favor as presented, with potentially adding the I and the E, I should say. Okay,
And
that's
I will make that
6-0.
change. I'll also make sure that everyone has an updated copy with that edit on goal 4 as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
411. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So also as part of my entry plan, one of the things that will be connected to our FY27 budget, but then just part of my entry plan and getting to know families, getting to know students, will be listening sessions. So I shared these, I believe I shared these out in the memo. It was quite long and consumed a lot of Friday night writing, but I actually love doing it. So Beverly High School will be December 4th at 9 a.m. Beverly Middle School, these will all be at 9 a.m. Beverly Middle School will be November 20th. Ayers will be January 8th. I had a test run with Ayers last week. I plan to do 2. These are the first and Ayers the second. Centerville, November 18th. Cove School, October 30th. Hannah, December 11th. North Beverly, December 18th. And the McEwen Preschool on November 13th. While not shown here, each one of these will also have a nighttime virtual, more than likely on the same day. There is one conflict I need to work around for a nighttime Beverly event, so I just need to work around that. Most of these are Thursdays, with the exception of Centerville on November 18th, which is a Tuesday. I apologize. The nighttime sessions will be held via Zoom, and that link will be emailed out to families and caregivers to be able to register for access, just to prevent what has become a little bit more prevalent recently with Zoom attacks. So just to try to limit that as best as possible. So these are the nights, these are the events, and also as part of our budget process, use these as an opportunity to hear what people might be looking for, and then consolidate those into themes as we build our budget. Budget planning. During the F&F meeting, Ms. Emma Puglisi spoke about a community survey that we've been collaboratively working on and researching. One of the things that we're really looking at is to solicit stakeholder feedback. And so not just our parents and caregivers, but our staff, our students, our community. We really need to hear from them to be able to build the best possible budget, to make sure that we are providing families, caregivers, and our community outlets for their voices to be heard. As you've heard through many sources, if you're paying attention in the news media, the upcoming budget season will be challenging for many municipalities. It's just an unfortunate fact of where we are. For schools, there's a significant amount of uncertainty around the actions directed toward the Department of Education nationally and how those trickle-down effects will affect us. We're hopeful that, as I mentioned earlier this evening, people will make their voices known and heard at the Chapter 70 forums, and hopefully that will prompt our legislators to act. So the survey will be best practices. We're trying to keep it short in length. I'm a huge fan of limited open-ended questions to give people, if we didn't ask a question that people felt we should have, tell us about it in the open response section at the end. So the majority, though, will be closed-ended questions, so we can really try to get clear responses. The platform considerations, how easy is it for this survey to be translated? The question formatting options, survey management as in deployment, how do we make sure we're getting responses from our constituents, and then using strong and robust response analytics. At this time, I'll pop it open, and as I'm struggling to speak, we'll turn it over to our trusted business manager, Ms. Puglisi, to comment further.
Thank you very much. So this is the draft version of the survey. So right now it is in Google Forms because that is just sort of the easiest way to do it. But again, we're looking into what other options might be available and just sort of weighing those all together. So as Dr. Cushing mentioned, we are really looking to get this survey in front of a number of our stakeholders with varied perspectives. And so we've had some conversations both at F&F and internally about different ways that we are hoping to engage all of those different sectors. So how can we engage our students and encourage responses through the leveraging of other student groups? If the student council can help us, advocate during lunchtime in the lunchroom and have like QR codes up in the lobby that students could participate, making sure that it will absolutely be included in Dr. Cushing's communications, but also our principal newsletters. Sharing it with our staff, and then also working with our other community partners just to sort of reach a broader audience. So then a very small amount of demographic information relative to the schools that the student or students currently attend. But again, not having a student in the school district is not necessarily preclude you from completing the survey, as we are looking for community members as well. And that will inform, as we look through really that robust analysis of the data, the perception of different stakeholders and community sectors of our community, what their perceptions might be, and to use that to inform that process. And so the first question is to solicit feedback about the perception of the current funding levels in assorted areas. And so again, that is, we're looking relative to academic opportunities, social emotional learning, special education services, access to technology, our facilities and maintenance, and out-of-school time program and transportation. You'll see that the sort of the responses and the themes that we're asking are consistent question to question. Again, as we sort of talk about question integrity, we're not trying to switch things out on folks. And then asking folks how they feel the current district spending aligns with our mission and strategic goals. So just asking for some feedback there. And then asking folks to provide insight into, as we move into next year's budget cycle, how they would rank order importance for investment of dollars in our budget. And then, again, across those same categories that we talked about before. And then similarly, if we were in an event where the district needed to reduce spending, how they would prioritize reductions in spending. And then at the bottom, an open opportunity to share any other feedback that they did not feel was captured in this survey.
Happy to take any thoughts or feedback. Feel free now, or if you would like to email us directly. I really want to make sure that this captures as much information as possible from as many people as possible to make sure that we are doing as comprehensive a job as we can.
Ms. Robinson?
Just a thought for students in middle and high school who have advisory time, that would be a good opportunity for everybody to do something at exactly the same time, just so you get a good number of responses.
I appreciate that.
That's wonderful feedback. Thank you.
So, moving forward with my report, under Massachusetts general law, the school resource officer, there's an agreement. They have the state commission for school resource officers has put forward a model agreement that I have included in the packet. While the superintendent has to provide an annual report by August 1st, and also must present to DESE the three items: the cost of assigning an SRO, a description of the proposed budget for mental, social, and emotional health support profile, the number of school-based arrests, citations, and court referrals made in the previous year, disaggregated as required by DESE, and then finally, the public filing of documents. So just making sure that this is not one of the three, but making sure that the final MOU adopted by the superintendent and chief of police is made public and filed annually with DESE. So this is an annual requirement that I will more than likely bring before the body in May or June normally, so that it is continually updated as required by law. So this is obviously a lot of text. I apologize for that. But local police departments and superintendents have to at least adopt the model at a minimum, all right? SRO assignment, chief of police, at the request of the superintendent, shall assign at least one SRO to serve the school district. We are fortunate to have two, primarily serving the middle and high school, but always available to go to our elementaries as requested or needed. Selection criteria is not based solely on seniority. Preference must be given to candidates who demonstrate the requisite personality and character to really work effectively with our students, youth and educators. Preference is also given to officers who have specialized training in this area and a demonstrated ability to work successfully with a population that has similar racial and ethnic background of the student body. So really making sure that, let's be honest, many of our students may not have a positive view of police in their lives. And making sure that we have school resource officers who can build relationships and work with families who may not have the greatest experiences with law enforcement as we've seen nationwide over, in particular, the last 13 years, but probably going back 250 years, to be honest. So the reality is, though, is that since the time of Ferguson, Missouri, this has really become an issue. And while school resource officers have been filmed in other parts of the country doing things that are not the best with students, we, in Massachusetts, the commission was put together to make sure that there are clearly established norms in these agreements moving forward. An annual evaluation of the school resource officers. And so operating procedures, I'll move there real quickly. The chief of police, in consultation with the superintendent, has to establish operating procedures that are detailed and describe use of force, arrest, citation, and court referral on school property. A description of students' legal rights, including search and questioning protocols and circumstances requiring notification of parents and administrators, and protocols for diverting and referring at-risk students to school and community-based supports. So these are things that I will work with the chief of police on, but I wanted to make sure that I brought this before the body so that the school committee had at least a beginning understanding of that 2022 update to the law, if you did not already have one. So if I've been redundant, I apologize. I don't believe I need a vote on this because the agreement is between the superintendent and, however, I will take any feedback you have. I don't anticipate signing before our next meeting because I have work to do with the chief of police on this beforehand. So particularly around the minimum operating procedures to make sure that those are in place. But I would happily take any feedback the committee has into consideration when working on this agreement. I want to thank everybody and happy to take any questions or comments from the body, but that is my presentation for this evening.
I have a couple of comments. I don't know if any other members wish to go first. Okay. I think Beverly has enjoyed a great working relationship with our police officers who serve as our SROs. They are part of our community and a really important piece of the climate at our schools. I'm not sure that I personally have seen an operating or memorandum of understanding previously. I know that in standing committee meetings, we did ask the two prior superintendent for a lot more details about interactions and some of that DESI data that you talked about because we wanted to make sure we were effective. I think at the time we only had one SRO and we now have two, and we have this new middle school that provides a house, so to speak, for our SROs to hang out, as well as at the high school. I see the next steps, as you outlined, to fill in some of the blanks in this templatized version with the police chief. I do have some questions about how much we can customize some of the sections around training. I also think, in particular, this year, the cooperation or non-cooperation with federal agencies is really important in having clear operating protocols about what a judicially signed warrant looks like to make sure that it's clear and explicit in our agreement. I also have some concerns about, in the model template, just the availability of student information to our SROs. I understand the intent behind some of the language about limiting the use of that information, but I would like clarity on exactly how access is granted to our law enforcement partners. I know that we collect a lot of data now that we have programs in place that are trying to serve all of the needs of our students, and I would just want to have pretty strong controls over access to student data. I think that's the scope of my feedback at this point, and I look forward to seeing a working draft if possible. Go ahead, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
This is hopefully just a easy, quick question. There's certainly a changing landscape for our young people, and we can see that from your PD calendar, some of the things that will be covered. There's also training for the SROs. Do they share in any of the professional development opportunities at the school, or do they get separate training on some of the things that are specific to what students are tackling?
In my experience, generally speaking, SROs will participate in PD that can help, and this is, I want to say, not Beverly specific right now, but in my experience working with 6 previous SROs, they will participate in, there's a state conference annually specific for school resource officers to provide training, especially around how to make sure you're working with our youth. But also on the PD day, I will request that our SROs participate in the AI sessions, as well as the HAWK and the LGBTQIA, so that they participate in those, as those are some pretty big issues facing the district.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands. Thank you, Dr. Cushing.
You're welcome.
Moving forward on our agenda, the chair has a formal vote request for pest management. Our Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities had recommended for approval the redeployment of rodenticide should there be an uptick in rodent activity to give that leniency. And the reason this comes as a vote is because, as per our policy EBAB and under Mass General Law, generally, we do not condone the use of any rodenticide. And so this would give flexibility to continue some of the successful programs that were trialed or piloted over the summer to reduce the number of critters that we have sharing our school buildings. So I'm looking for a motion of approval based on the recommendation of the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities to approve the redeployment of rodenticide should there be an uptick in rodent activity by our buildings and grounds.
I'll make, as dystopian as that sounds, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Someone want to second the motion for discussion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Is there any discussion? I will offer that this has been a concern of our educators, of students in my life, and obviously our buildings and grounds have been keeping track and will know when that moment may be. We heard at the Standing Committee how carefully deployed and monitored these tools will be used to affect the populations. Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. Yes, I agree, and we'll vote yes on this. I just think it needs to be said that we have several hundred children and adults in every building every day, in 2 instances over 1,000, and that there is food in almost every room of every building, and that mice get indoors in every building in the world just about, especially when it's cold. So I expect that we'll need to, at times, deploy, and, you know, I just think we have to understand reality, and I think, you know, our custodial work and kind of thoughtful cooperative work of everybody in the building, you know, is probably all key to minimizing the need to have to, you know, deal with this, and so.
Right. It is definitely a collaborative effort, and as part of our negotiations, we have a reporting system that's now online so that evidence or sightings are tracked, and we can use a more targeted approach as well. But to your point, especially student athletes who leave their bags in the locker room all day, make sure your snacks are in some kind of rodent-proof container. Otherwise, they may be joining you as you get your uniform on. Okay. Oh, Ms. Visnick.
I want to say that it's not just rodenticide that we have, that we try to avoid, well, that we make a commitment to avoid. It's also pesticides. So in general, we're just trying to not use things that we would want children to be, you know, walking in, or younger children rolling around in the fields and then bringing home. And so that's one point that I want to make. The other point I wanted to make is that we had in FNF a lot of discussion around if a rodent consumes the bait and then goes back outside. Well, that's very dependent on the weather. But I'll use this opportunity to say, we also have a policy that says you're not supposed to have your pets on campus, right? So I understand and respect, it's not just pets that could consume that rodent. And so there's a very thin line there, and we had a very thorough discussion around the fact that at the state level, there's debates going on right now. There's a bill being considered to ban rodenticides, and our head of B&G answered to that topic to say he has a backup plan, a different kind of drug, I guess, if you want to call it, that if the state ban goes through, there's a backup plan. So again, I just want to, I'm sure people at home are watching and thinking, oh, we shouldn't do that. You know, there's a domino effect, and that is very true. And as it's winter time, if there in fact is a food source, which as the mayor just said, there almost always is, and if it's cold outside, there's no incentive to go back out, right? So we had all these conversations about trying to minimize that domino effect. So if anybody is really concerned about that, I'm happy to talk to them about it, and or you can just watch the BevCam
I was
video.
just going to recommend people watch the BevCam recording from when that discussion happened, because I think it's very intentional and thoughtful process. You know, this is really a last resort if there's an uptick again, which we anticipate with the colder weather, to give the tools. No more questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of the recommended motion? 6-0, thank you. Also on the chair's portion of the agenda this evening is the introduction of 4 policies for a first reading. This is CHD, administration in the absence of policy, therefore giving the superintendent the ability to administrate when we haven't provided a prescribed policy for the situation. CL, which is research and administrative reports. CM, which is school district annual report. And GA, which is our personnel policies goals. I would refer each of the members to the comments that Ms. Bergeron has included in these first reading items. We have some Beverly specific, and she has noted that MASC has removed a couple sample policies. However, other cities and towns still consider them and keep them as part of their policy book. Some of the policies relate directly to Mass General Law. We've always had the opinion that we shouldn't duplicate law in our policy manuals, except that it does provide an easy index and searchability to find certain topics without having to go through the catalog of Mass General laws to find the topic. So please do keep that in mind. As you review this, we will pick it up again at our November regular school committee meeting for a decision on whether to mark them as reviewed, to strike them from our policy, or to make amendments. Next, our Standing Committee on Finance and Facility is bringing forward for second reading 3 policies. I'm not sure if Chair Visnick wants to remind us of those, or I can read them. The first is our facilities development goal, noting the only changes are commitment to standardizing school committee throughout the policy, so that's the only difference for MASC. Also, FF is our naming of facilities, and in this case, we're inclusive by adding guardians and caregivers after the word parent. And we also had highlighted the school committee shall retain the right to vote on a proposal at the same meeting if such a proposal is presented in terms of naming of facilities. And we had a discussion at our last meeting of why that's important. Slight differences between the term chair or president. Beverly uses school committee president. And we also have PTO, PTSOs here versus PTA. So not a lot of difference between the current MASC version and our own. And then for FCB, retirement of facilities, this is based on the sample from MASC. It talks about different factors that will be considered when and if a department decides to retire a facility. For instance, the Briscoe Middle School, I think, is the last one that this body had surplused. So there's really just minor edits to conform with parents, guardians, caregivers. Is there a motion to approve as reviewed with minor edits? Or is there another motion that someone wishes to make?
Motion to approve with minor edits.
Okay, thank you. So motion to approve with the minor edits as shown and seconded by Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Any other comments? Questions? All those in favor? Thank you. I'll work with Ms. Bergeron to get that updated on the website. Time is 8:39, 6-0. And then curriculum instruction and student life also is bringing for second reading. I don't know if Chair Mackenzie DeFranza wants to introduce those, or you'd like me to read them? Okay. Yeah, there's just two here. IHA is Basic Instructional Program. There's no noted changes in IHAI, Occupational Education. I'll just say that this one speaks to the school committee's policy about recognizing that students in pre-K through grade 12 should be afforded the opportunity to be informed about the world of work, be aware of many vocations available to them, develop a respect and dignity for work, and be allowed to develop an understanding related to technical, consumer, occupational, recreational, and cultural aspects of industry and technology. And this is related to Mass General Laws, Chapter 71, and a bunch of subsections.
Motion to approve, to mark as reviewed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any comments or clarifications? All those in favor? We will mark those as reviewed as of tonight. Thank you. The chair also wishes to acknowledge that we have received a demand to bargain from our bargaining units A and C, and that the negotiating subcommittee will meet on Monday at 5 p.m. with units A and C at the McEwen School. The agenda will include executive session, so it will not be on BevCam, but the Standing Committee on Negotiations will be meeting on Monday. We also, in November, on the 12th, have our regular curriculum instruction and student life meeting at 6:15. Since Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza will be our representative at the MASC conference, which is happening at the same time, Ms. Robinson and I will decide who will chair that meeting, and look forward to Ms. Brown helping inform an agenda with your help. We also will have a regular school committee meeting at 7:30 p.m. That is the next opportunity for the public to address the body on either agenda-related or non-agenda-related items per our policy that allows community speak at our regular school committee meetings. And then just as a real heads up, because of the Thanksgiving holiday, we're actually going to be back at it the following week on the 19th, where we have Finance and Facilities at 6:15 and our Committee of the Whole at 7:30. Again, that's due to the Thanksgiving holiday. We're moving our meetings in those conjoined weeks, the 12th and the 19th. So make sure your calendar reflects that, and we'll see you here, along with BevCam and members of the public. Thank you all for joining us this evening. The chair is now going to make a motion to vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes: Purpose 7 and Purpose 3. Purpose 7 is to review and approve executive session minutes from an executive session meeting August 27, 2025. And Purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the Beverly Teachers Association, Units A, B, C, AFSCME Local 2894, AFSA, and any individual contracts that may be open, because it may have, an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. I have made that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. We do need to do a roll call. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho,
Yes.
Canan Mackenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva is absent. Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
And Rachel Abel. The time is 8:43. The chair is stating again that the school committee is now moving into executive session. We will not return to open session. We thank you all again for joining us, and thank you, BevCam. We'll give people a moment to file out, and we'll see you back here in November.